All right, let's dive right in. Forget all the vague career advice you've ever heard. Today, we're going to cut through the noise and dissect the actual blueprint for joining the top 0.1% of software engineers. This is a no-nonsense roadmap, a straight shot to what really matters for achieving true mastery. And right out of the gate, we've got to shatter the biggest myth out there. It's not about collecting a long list of shiny new tools and frameworks for your resume. The reality, it's way, way harder than that. It's all about the depth of your thinking and having the guts to tackle the problems that are just fundamentally difficult. And let's just pause on this number for a second. What does it actually mean? Well, if you figure there are about 30 million software engineers in the world, we're talking about a group of only 30,000 people. So, we're not just talking about being good at your job. We're talking about a level of expertise that is genuinely rare. So here's the game plan. We're going to start by totally redefining what it even means to be an elite engineer. Then we'll get into the non-negotiable foundation you have to build. After that, we'll talk about why you have to solve hard problems, how teaching makes you better, and what it really means to play the long game. And then we'll get to it, the one brutal truth that holds it all together. Okay, first up, redefining elite engineering. This is the part where most people fail before they even get started. Why? Because it all boils down to your mental model, your entire approach from day one. And this right here, this is the core difference. The 99.9%, they ask, how do I use this thing? But the top 0.1%, they are obsessed with a different question. Why is it built this way? They're not just thinking about the next small salary bump. They're building deep, fundamental knowledge, leverage that will pay off for a decade or more. All right, so once you've got that mindset, we can start building the foundation. And let me be clear, these aren't just, nice to haves. These are the absolute, non-negotiable fundamentals you have to know down to the metal. And you know what? This quote right here is the perfect litmus test. It's not about shrugging your shoulders and blaming the network. It's about being able to trace a performance issue all the way down to its physical roots. Can you truly explain the why behind a slow system? Because that's the standard. So what does that foundation look like? Well, first, it's deep computer science. And I mean really understanding the trade-offs of different algorithms, not just memorizing them to pass an interview. And then you've got to have a deep, deep understanding of the operating system, how it juggles processes and threads, how virtual memory works, what a system call actually is. This is the absolute bedrock. And it doesn't stop there. The foundation also includes computer architecture, understanding the literal physical reasons your code is slow, like a CPU waiting because of a cache miss. It means you actually get networking, way down into the nitty-gritty of TCP. And it means you get how databases really work under the hood, from B trees to write-ahead logs. Okay, so once that foundation is rock solid, the path splits. And the road to the top 0.1% is not about being a generalist. It's about picking one genuinely difficult domain and just going deeper than pretty much anyone else. So what does that mean? It means you have to change how you think about yourself. You need to stop being a full-stack developer. Let's be honest, that title has become way too generic. Instead, you become the person who solves the specific, painful problems that everybody else runs away from. So what are we talking about here? What are these hard domains? Things like distributed systems, compilers, low-level security, building database engines from scratch. These are fields where just knowing the basics gets you nowhere. The learning curve is insane, but if you master one, the career leverage is just incredible. And how do you master a domain like that? Simple. You build things that hurt. You don't just follow a tutorial. You build it yourself, from scratch. Write a tiny operating system. Build a key value store that can actually survive a crash. If the process isn't painful, if it doesn't force you to debug things at a really low level, then it's just too easy. And that's because this is where the real learning happens. It's not in a classroom, it's not from a book, it's forged in the fire of debugging messy, complicated, real-world systems, reading actual kernel source code, picking apart company postmortems, and being the one who can figure out why everything's on fire at 3 in the morning. Okay, so this brings us to a really powerful and honestly kind of counterintuitive idea. To truly deeply master these complex topics, you have to become a teacher. You have to learn how to write and explain things with absolute clarity. The concept is called forcing clarity, and it's pretty simple, really. When you force yourself to explain something really complex in simple terms, it immediately shines a giant spotlight on all the gaps in your own understanding. You know the saying, If you can't explain it simply, you probably don't understand it well enough yourself. And look, this isn't some abstract idea. There are real, concrete ways you can do this, starting tomorrow. Keep a technical blog. Contribute to open source projects, which forces you to explain your code. Or just write really good, detailed design documents at your job. Every single one of these things forces you to sharpen your thinking. But all of this, it naturally brings up a big question. How long does this all take? And let's be real for a second. Everything we've talked about, this isn't a 6-month boot camp. This is a long, long game. And there are absolutely no shortcuts. None. So let's break down what this actually looks like over time. The first 2 years, it's just painful confusion. You'll feel lost a lot. Then, somewhere around year 3 or 4, things start to click into place. By year 5, maybe 7, other people will start calling you an expert. But it's not until you're pushing a decade that you start seeing the deep patterns that connect everything together. And you gotta know, along this decade-long journey, there are so many traps. These are the things that catch almost everyone. Chasing every hot new framework that comes out. Only studying to pass the next interview. Getting stuck with a generic label like front end. Focusing on your salary way too early. These are the shortcuts that actually lead you nowhere fast. So, what does the day-to-day actually look like? Well, it's not about pulling all-nighters, it's about a simple, sustainable, daily routine. A couple of hours of focused work done with incredible consistency. A little bit of reading, a little bit of building, some writing, and reviewing the basics. It sounds small, I know, but you compound that over 10 years, that is the engine that produces these elite results. Which brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, the single most important idea in this entire blueprint. This is it. This is the one thing that truly, fundamentally separates the top 0.1% from absolutely everyone else. And here it is. Top engineers aren't necessarily smarter. They don't have some magic gene for this stuff. Their single most defining trait is that their raw, genuine curiosity simply outlasted everybody else's discipline. Just let that sink in for a second. Discipline, that's a battery that runs out. It gets you started, but curiosity, that's the infinite fuel source for the whole decade-long journey. So, we're going to end on this one question. We all know discipline is important, right? It's what will get you through those first couple of years of painful confusion. But to actually make it to the top, to be in that tiny fraction of a percent, the real question you have to ask yourself is this. Is your curiosity deep enough to last the entire decade?